maybe. I had it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Excuse me, Rob, can you take a seat?
Yeah.
We need
Oh,
to
I'm sorry,
begin.
I'm sorry.
There's a little feet coming down.
I gotta get my phone back.
There we go. Okay.
Good morning, everyone. It's a little different to be sitting in here today and looking down at a few people. So those of you who might be watching us via Zoom, please excuse us munching as we go. The early morning brought in some treats. So we're having a little bit of a breakfast, so please excuse that. Robin, may we have roll call, please?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Hensick. Chair Stevens.
Present.
Vice Chair Scott.
Present.
Commissioner Hammond. Commissioner Roughton.
Here.
Secretary Bockert.
Present.
Commissioner Rubis.
Here.
Alternate Adams. Alternate Quarternick. Commission Liaison Broyles. Here. Council Member Liaison Nyon.
Here.
And Council Member Liaison Rambo.
Here.
All right, thank you. We do have quorum. And just a reminder to everyone, please do turn on your microphone when you speak this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're glad to have as many as possible here this morning at an unusual time to meet, but it does get us up and get us going this morning. I think we will just, since we have so much on the agenda, I won't chatter this morning. We will go for the approval of the minutes of the June 23rd, 2022 meeting, followed by the minutes of the July 1st, 2022 special minutes. These minutes have been distributed. Is there any question or are there any corrections to the minutes that were distributed? Hearing none, I will say they are approved by general consent. We have our agenda in front of us, but this morning we're going to ask for a motion to move the agenda item concerning the renaming of the Old Slave Road to be the first item on the agenda, as there may be a few people joining us on Zoom who wish to speak. May I have a motion, please?
I'll go move. Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any additional discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed. We may move on now to the renaming of Old Slave Road. Yes. Okay, I'm very sorry about that. Is there anyone wishing to speak about this, either via Zoom or here in the chambers?
If a member in the audience would like to speak at this time and you are via Zoom, please do use the hand raise feature and we will promote you as a panelist to speak to the commission. And we are asking if you are interested in speaking on Old Slave Road to go ahead and speak at this time. All right, I am promoting Patrick Barnage as a panelist to speak to the commission. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
You hold just one moment. We're trying to
Testing.
Bear with us a second.
testing, testing. Testing, testing.
Words, words, words.
Can you hear me now? Testing, testing, testing. Testing, testing. Testing, testing.
Mr. Barnett,
Can you hear me?
Mr. Barnage, if
Yes.
you would try again, please.
Testing, can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Testing,
Mr. Barnage, are you still on there?
yes. I'm here.
If you would please talk into the microphone.
I am. Can you hear me? Testing. Testing,
I think
Testing.
we might be having- We cannot hear you, Mr. Barnage.
can you hear me now?
Is it on? Is it turned up?
Yeah.
testing.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, hold on, what's this? Okay.
Mhm.
Is it something that we did in the process of?
Our apologies.
We're glad that you're working on it and not us.
Well, I don't hear it from there, so it should theoretically be going to Bluetooth. No.
Testing.
Here comes the fixer-upper.
Oh, here's the guy we've been waiting for.
So we have to hook up the Bluetooth right now, but there's no sound coming.
Testing.
This is what they originally had it plugged into with the.
Hello?
Is there a reason the blue working?
It's not very.
It says it's connected.
I don't think it's plugged in.
I don't know if I should disconnect it.
Testing.
Disconnect so we can hear Mr. Barnett.
Hello, can anyone hear me?
Mr. Barnage, we can hear you. We are still fixing the issue. Apologies.
Okay, I'm
Just give us
sorry.
A few more minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, we can hear it. You want to just press? He's coming through Zoom. It should actually have his microphone here. Yeah. Because that there seems part of speak to it.
All right, Mr. Barnage, can you please do another test? Thank you.
Testing. 1, 2, testing.
Thank you. You are now live. Go
Okay.
ahead and make a comment.
I apologize. I know I probably should have shown up in person, but I had a work meeting downtown. Anyway, so I am a resident at the intersection of Old Slave Road and Spiceberry Lane. My wife and I moved out about 3.5 years ago with our 4 children from the city. And I am here as a representative for our neighborhood to change the name from Old Slave Road to Madison Valley. We think it is more inclusionary, and also we think the name is more representative and of the historic figure who lived there too. The name Old Slave is not actually a very historic name. I know this came up a number of years ago as well, but it was more of a name to drive out people from living on the street, and we unanimously as residents decided on a new name that would be more inclusionary of who we are and the current times of as well. So we have signatures from all the residents on the street. 100% are on board with the name change. We also wanted to make sure that the new name would not be confusing or abbreviated in the future. It is named after Elijah Madison, but we knew that Elijah would be abbreviated down to E. Madison in people's address writings, which would be confusing because people would think of it as East Madison. So it's chosen as Madison Valley.
Thank you, Mr. Barnage. Are you done with your comment? If so, I will direct the chair to move into this agenda item.
I am. Thank you for the time.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much. Mr. Vunich, would you like to present, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and members of the commission, as you just heard from Mr. Barnard, the property owners that are served by Old Slave Road have collectively come together, completed the required petition that is part of our code relative to street name changes, and all of the property owners that are served by that particular street have signed it in favor of the name change. Back in 2013, this particular item was presented to the Historic Preservation Commission, and it wasn't done necessarily because of any regulation. It was a desire on the part of the commission to ensure that any historic aspects would be fully explored, and certainly the history of the area rightly treated. In 2013, the Historic Preservation Commission did support a name change. It was not Madison Valley, but certainly they've always recognized now for almost the past 9 years that Old Slave Road may not be the appropriate name in 2022. From that perspective, the department has prepared a draft recommendation for the commission's consideration this morning. In that recommendation, it goes through the short history of Elijah Madison, who was a slave that was brought to the area in the 1800s, left, fought for the Union during the Civil War, returned as a freedman, bought property, and for the most part, lived in the area of West St. Louis County in the vicinity of Old Slave Road for most of his life. He is laid to rest in a private cemetery off of Wild Horse Creek Road, west of Route 109. So the selection of Madison, at least in the department's perspective, is appropriate. I would also suggest that Old Slave Road is the center of a valley, and that valley is defined by Wild Horse Creek and many of its tributaries. It is a wonderful setting if you've had the chance to drive on the street and see it. And I think the combination of the two is very reflective of the character of the area, but more importantly, does recognize one of the most prominent people that had a history in that vicinity. From a practical standpoint, the Department of Public Works, Mr. Brown, contacted St. Louis County to ensure that if the street name was chosen, Madison Valley, it would not be a repeat and cause confusion for police, EMS, and fire. That gentleman at St. Louis County said that Madison Valley was acceptable. There are a number of Madisons, but in this particular case, Madison Valley was accepted. Additionally, the Department of Planning contacted the Fire Marshal, Jim McKay at the Monarch Fire Protection District, and as is recited in the report for you today, he mentioned that as long as St. Louis County is fine with the name, they will provide it to the fire district. They will enter it into their logs, and from their perspective, they will provide the same level of service, whether it's Old Slave Road or Madison Valley. That's important in the fact that we want to ensure the commission members that we are doing everything we can to ensure the safety of the residents if the street name change is recommended by this body. Finally, in the report, the department concludes by saying that, for the most part, there is unanimous support in that valley and along the street. That wasn't always the case in past conversations relative to Old Slave Road. And the department believes that if there is support, and a willingness to do what they've done in terms of the naming, that the commission should be supportive. And so therefore, the recommendation before you today is to endorse the name Madison Valley. You may wonder what happens after a recommendation, regardless if favorable or not, is made by the commission. It goes to the Administration Public Works Committee of City Council, 8 members of the 16-member council, and then they make a recommendation to City Council, which makes the ultimate decision. Summary: Madison Valley is sought by all property owners that are served by that particular street. And the department believes the inclusion of Madison and the description of Valley are appropriate and would suggest to the commission to consider it favorably. If there are any questions regarding the department's report, Ms. Keefe, Ms. Ripito, and I'd be glad to try to answer them at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from any of the council? Yes.
Is the United States Postal Service in the loop of approvals?
Mr. Rubus, that's a very good question. And yes, surprisingly to some, it wasn't me at first. Actually, St. Louis County sets the addresses and forwards them to the Postal Service. So once St. Louis County endorses the street name change, it'll get to the Postal Service lickety split.
And for how long after this change will the Postal Service acknowledge things sent to Old Slave Road so that people continue to get their mail?
That's a very good question, and one the department hasn't researched, but certainly can find out for you and then send a follow-up email just to give you some idea. I know when people move, the forwarding of mail does continue for a significant period of time.
But these people aren't moving.
Yes.
So we want to make sure that they do get their mail.
Well, and we can, that's 63005. So that's the Chesterfield
Right.
Postal Office. So we can call up and at least talk to someone there and see if, the process.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else? Yes, Rob.
Yeah, Joe, there has to be, my understanding is there has to be a suffix, like lane or a place or something like that. I didn't see that anywhere in here. What is it?
The suffix is actually valley.
So I named my 200-year-old road BB's Valley when I built my home to honor my aunt. It is a valley. And they came back and said, no, it has to be road or drive or place or lane or something like that. And so I have BB's Valley Lane because it seemed the most countrified and the least obtrusive. But they would not allow, I think it was emergency folks, the people at the county wouldn't allow naming without having that, such a suffix.
Well, what we did is Ted Zeldner is the gentleman at the assessor's office, technical services, that manages the addresses. And he sent over like a 3-page document with all the appropriate suffixes for street names. And then again, the Department of Public Works submitted the name Madison Valley to him and he endorsed it. So I don't know if there's been a change.
You may want to just verify. It would be, something that the people that live there ought to be able to, weigh in on.
Certainly. And again, when we're done with the meeting today, I'll check with Rick Brown. I was basing the content of the memo from the department on his memorandum that he provided to the council committee. And so from that perspective, we'll verify with him. And then if we need to, we'll call Ted Zeldner over at St. Louis County and make sure that he understands it's Madison Valley, not Madison Valley Drive or anything like that.
Great. I would like that information. I think it's a great name change. It makes a negative into a positive.
Any other comments or questions? Yes, Steve.
No, I'm sorry to see the old name go, but it really, since it wasn't platted until the 70s, it's really not an historical name. So I think it's very reasonable to change it. I would encourage the city to place a plaque on Wild Horse Creek Road, on the public road, describing who Elijah Madison was and what he is. So people can know when they see the street name, they can look it up and see who he really was and maybe some recognition that way. but I would be for the change.
I've written down your suggestion and we'll pass it on to the Department of Public Works, see where we might have some right of way that would lend itself to that, to accommodate it so there's not public access onto a private street. And then kind of go from there and let you all know.
Yeah, no, it should be on public right away.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if you want to recognize some from the
Teresa.
audience.
Thank you. As Councilman just joining you. And I just wanted to ask if we have made sure with the African American cultural groups of people that this is an appropriate change. So, I mean, we all look alike here and we maybe need to ask people that this name change is affecting the most, if in fact that is acceptable to them also. So down the road, it doesn't come back and say, someone say, you know, that we would have preferred having it stay the same or something else, just a suggestion.
Thank you. I do know that when this came before the commission in the past, there were many comments made from the people in Westland Acres that were taken to heart on the changes. Joe, anything else on that one?
Well, just as you mentioned, Madam Chair, there seemed to be a mixed opinion in the Westland Acres community relative to changing the name or not. And in respect to the property owners, from that commission's perspective in 2013, they agreed a name change should be considered. They offered some potential options, but again, they just wanted a historical component to it and something that was descriptive of the area.
Anything else? Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion, we accept the recommendation and approve the name change.
Thank you. Dan seconds.
I'll second it.
Sorry, Dan beat you to it. Any other questions or comments about this? All those in favor, please raise your hand. You can't vote, Rob.
Oh, that's right.
Sorry. Is there anyone against? The motion has passed.
Well, two thank yous. First, thank you for the action today, and then thank you for moving it to the front of the agenda to accommodate Mr. Barnage. I know he
We're happy
appreciates
to,
it.
happy to
Thank you.
do that. May I ask that as this goes along in the other departments, that we be kept abreast of this? I think another time when it had, we had passed the change, we didn't hear anymore and thought it had been completed, and we're surprised to see this come back. So we want it to go through the proper channels, but please keep us abreast of it because we have a stake in this as well.
I will send you an email as it moves through the
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Moving back now to our agenda. The next item that we will discuss is the Student Route 66 Task Force updates. Robin, you want to address this for us?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you, and members of the commission. I am going to speak to this item sitting down today because I do have some pictures to share with you. So we do now have a full set of 8 students representing 5 area schools in this area for our Student Route 66 Task Force. They have already jumped into the fray and have been involved in the Route 66 Roadside Park project, both in their own task force meeting and also at our recent visioning workshop for the park. The students are on the screen before you. I just wanted to touch on a couple fun facts. Actually, today, Ms. Shruti Senthil, if I'm saying that correctly, is leaving for California traveling Route 66 herself, and she has told us that she will take lots of pictures and she will take video along the way to share with us some of that journey. So that was actually inspired from she and her father attending our Big Chief Roadhouse brunch as part of the student Route 66 Task Force orientation. So I just wanted to inform you of that fun fact. At their meeting last Wednesday, as noted, we did talk a lot about the Route 66 roadside park project, and we brought them up to speed. They basically walked in your footsteps with the base map and scaled cutout activity that you yourselves participated in at the kickoff and site visit. I'm also happy to report that now that all 8 students have been through orientation, they've also visited the site itself and had an opportunity to visit the historic Route 66 corridor and tour the length of it. So with that, I have included draft minutes for your review in your packets. So if you would like to learn more, please do review those draft minutes. So moving on into the second component of this report is the addition of a youth liaison to the Historic Preservation Commission. So you may remember last month at your June meeting, we talked about potentially amending the Historic Preservation Commission bylaws to include a youth liaison as a non-voting member. At the time, we talked about while currently we have a student Route 66 task force, and it makes sense for one such member to serve as that liaison, we talked about keeping the language open so that once this task force is dissolved, we have the opportunity to include other students from this area through a process so that we can continue to have that youth component as part of the commission. So you have had an opportunity to review those bylaws. And at this meeting today, we ask for a motion to potentially accept this proposal. And at that, I'll leave it to you. We are still following up with the city attorney to see if we need to amend the code as well. But for today, we will ask for an action on these proposed amendments to the bylaws. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Are there any questions, comments about this from commission members? And I'm going to ask, yes, Dan. Did you hear that, Robin?
Yes, I did. I would have to review the language, but I don't think, well, let me just take a look at that for a minute and then I'll comment.
Does everyone see where that is in the packet? It's page 4 of the bylaws for the student task force.
All right, so Madam Chair, with your permission, I'm going to go ahead and read into the microphone the current language. Currently, we are proposing at least one youth from the area, but no more than 2, shall be appointed to serve as a liaison to the Historic Preservation Commission, but may not serve as an officer of it. So if we were to take Mr. Routon's suggestion, we could potentially amend that language to at least one youth from the area, but no more than 2 may be appointed to serve as a liaison to the Historic Preservation Commission, but may not serve as an officer of it.
Any other comments on that? Yes, Jim.
Can we, when we appoint them with a termination date? It may not be a physical date, but at the conclusion of the whatever project they're working. Make it pass. Because I can see that as we go through down the road, we may have other projects that we want to do. And I think that might give us some flexibility where the youth that was appointed for the 66 project would leave and another student for a new project.
I think,
I am fully in support of having youth.
absolutely.
participate in
But if the way it reads currently, this would, as they're saying, go on and on and on, and that would be, they'd be just part of us until their termination date. But if we then want to have youth participate, say, in the Essen Log Cabin project, is it going to be the same students that are doing 66? I mean, we know what it's like to work on several projects at the same time, but maybe we could get more youth involved if there were different packets of students for each of the projects when they're being developed, rather than just same ones over and over and over.
If I may comment, or do you have something to add to that? As it is currently written, I think given that we're kind of lumping these youth liaisons in with our commission liaison, I would assume they would have the same term, which I believe is 1 year. Is that right? And then we reassess. But I can review the language, and we can just make a condition today that we limit that term to maybe 1 year. But as it's written, we tried to leave it open so that one or even two members could potentially serve on the commission at any one time. And I don't know that necessarily has to be linked to a task force or a committee. We might even just want to leave it open to where maybe, for the school year, we just nominate an area student to just be a part of the commission and its regular activities. So there might not be another group they're representing.
The 1 year brings to mind that several of the students are going into their senior year. So then at the conclusion of 1 year, there will no longer be students in Rockwood. So that eliminates some of them. Yes, Steve.
This says appoint, who will do the appointing? Because we do not appoint the commission liaison or the planning and zoning commission liaison. That's appointed by the mayor and approved by city council, I guess, and sent to us. Do we appoint these, or does this come from somebody else?
So we may make a recommendation to the mayor, but the mayor is responsible for appointing members to the commission.
Because I think we're very fortunate with the liaisons we've had appointed to us right now, but we really don't have much control over that.
That is correct. The way we added the language, we're hoping that it allowed for quite a bit of flexibility as to how these liaisons are to serve the commission. So I really, that was something we kept in mind as a department when we were discussing this, is how can we leave it as open-ended and flexible as possible while still building it into the structure of the Historic Preservation Commission. So I think I will review the language as it currently is to ensure that what I'm saying is correct. But I think generally how we planned it is we have some flexibility as to how that youth liaison serves. Yes.
Yes, Jim.
When the mayor appoints somebody, it usually in the document that he signs says, or a term ending such and such. When we make a recommendation to the mayor, we could also make a recommendation to that end date. So that way,
Good point. Thank you. Yes.
If Director Vunich confirms, then I would say that would potentially be a potential way to go.
Just my, Joe.
Certainly, the department is at the discretion of the commission and the suggestions that are being made. Ultimately, I think we need to refine how we want to do it, the length of service, and then the appointment process before you take a motion. So there's a lot of stuff on the table. So I would
Yes, there
probably
is.
say today is, let us get it refined. Let us talk to the city attorney,
Yeah,
loop
that
in
was
the
gonna be
mayor.
my next point.
and then we'll get something back to you that's, I think, actionable, and that you'll feel comfortable with.
Thank you. Elizabeth?
And Misty, I've attended the many events you've had with students, and I am, oh, sorry about that. I have attended those meetings you've had with the students, and I am pleasantly surprised at how eager they are to participate. And especially the middle school kids, and the comments that they make and how engaged they are is over summer. And some of them were not present in the very beginning. And so that has been very energizing for all of us. And I think we should ask them if they want to continue. But as a high school student and middle school student, often they're very busy folks during the school year. So I think if they're engaged right now, and we should give them an opportunity if they want to further in another project, which has been mentioned, which I think would be very helpful. They're connected. They are connected. But I just wanted to give that as an option as well, to open that up to them if they want to continue in another project or they want to, and as some of them will graduate.
And we did not choose these students.
No.
The recommendations came from the school's administration. So that, to me, said, these kids are good. And we are saying these kids are good.
Madam Chair, if I may, yes, these are very, very bright students, very involved. They're involved in their student councils. They're involved in yearbook. One of our middle school students couldn't attend the first orientation because he was in Florida competing in a geography and history bee. We have another student who is in the water polo Olympics. And then, of course, we have Ms. Shruthi, who is currently on her way to California on Route 66. And she's a budding planner. If you heard her at the visioning workshop, you would agree with me. She's already speaking the lingo. So we are very fortunate to have this group.
So do we need a motion?
Madam Chair, as I suggested, I think we've gotten a number of good suggestions that we need to incorporate into revised language. We need to talk with the city attorney and then also discuss this with the mayor. And hopefully at the August meeting, we'll have the final draft of the language for you to review and then act upon.
So we don't need to take any action to continue it later.
No, we'll keep this on the agenda based upon the conversation today.
Okay, thank you very much. So that moves us on to the Route 66 roadside park project. And Robin, it looks like you're up again.
All right, this time I will come to the podium. Madam Chair and members of the commission, our next item is our Route 66 roadside park project. In the memorandum I provided you in your packets, I have summarized all of our meetings and milestones to date. It is quite, when I put it all on the page like that, I was like, wow, look how far we have come in this project. We had a very successful visioning workshop this past Tuesday. Our SWT design has just really impressed us with the preparation they have put into these meetings and some of the concepts that they're already proposing to us. I do think we did lean towards a couple concepts at that meeting. However, as some next steps, we do need to discuss in depth the student design competition component for the park. And SWT Design has requested that this commission be brought back to have some additional conversation around the park conceptual layout. So at the visioning workshop, we had the opportunity to see bubble diagrams proposing various layouts of the park. We also had visual preference surveys. So we were able to look at various architectural elements, landscape elements, potential photo op elements, and talk about what aesthetic preferences we had as a group. We also talked about many of the ideas this commission has proposed for the park project at that meeting. So what SWT Design is proposing is to take the preferred conceptual layouts, the preferred images, and create an activity for us to play with it a little more in depth as a commission. So we will potentially be talking about a special meeting coming up here soon before the August 25th pinup review, which I believe is currently the next step on the schedule. Going back to the student design competition, this department, SWT Design, potentially a couple of our liaisons and student task force members, and then our social studies and STEM coordinators from Rockwood School District are going to have a Zoom meeting this coming Wednesday to start discussing what those parameters might be. And at that point, I will be following up with the commission with that report so that you are in the loop as to what direction we are headed with the competition as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments on Robin's presentation?
Great, thank you.
Looks like the next item is the points of interest map design. You're back.
I'm back. Well, this is a very exciting agenda item for me. It's been several months of myself, our graphic designer, our team at the Department of Planning and Parks going back and forth on the design for this map. But at this time, I do ask commissioners to step down from your areas, your lofty perches. And we as a group will have an opportunity to view these maps in their actual size. So without further ado. My teacher voice, I could probably do this. All right, so Madam Chair and Commissioners, to give you a more thorough review or overview of what you see before you. As you may remember, the main objective of this project was not only to develop a final map inclusive of all the scenic drives that this commission has developed to date, but also to provide a larger version of the map to remove some of the clutter that occurred to the previous one over time as additional scenic drives, as additional points of interest were added to it. So what you see before you is that final version of the map. We did lean towards a more functional map approach. This map is also inclusive of area hiking trails, bicycle infrastructure. There's a horseshoe icon indicating which parks are open or have equestrian trails. We also pulled out a map of the Wildwood Town Center and highlighted various activity centers across it. So you can see that shaded. The points of interest are also available upon it. And we have some added descriptions underneath it with pictures of the town center, the city hall, and even a conceptual future map of the Village Green project. We also, with this map, wanted to highlight Wildwood's historic Route 66, or our mother road. So we pulled that out as well. And I think our designer did a very nice job, very fun graphic of the road. And so we have a nice call out piece for historic Route 66 as well. On the what I consider the back of the map, we divided Wildwood up into its 4 quadrants, and we named them, as you may remember from the email I sent out. So we now have 4 very distinctive regions of Wildwood, including historical photos of various points of interest along the scenic drives. And we have reordered everything so that it flows pretty nicely on the map. And as you read, through it, we are still working on the cover for the map and some of those panels. So those are still in development. The back is primarily a reference key for those regions. But for the front, we're coming up with a pretty nice cover. I think we're going to go with a collage, like a photo collage from past Wildwood photo contests. And then I'd love your feedback and comments if you have any ideas for that, for the middle section. Actually, for the middle section, I was thinking we could advertise the Wildwood history book. But that's pretty much my overview. So what you have before you is I have the map on display, the front page and the back page. I also have a front and back. I glued them together version on this table over here. And then as an added bonus, I had some help from a friend, Mr. Scott, a male friend, I will admit. And I actually managed to put together a folded version of this, of this map, which I don't know if I could have done by myself. So, so that is here for your review as well. So you can open that up. It doesn't look very attractive all folded up because we haven't done the covers. But once you open it, you can see where those fold lines are going to be, and you can see how you can interact with it as a user. I have some Post-its here. If you find anything that you would like to comment on, please do so. Let's just give it the next 5 to 10 minutes or so and just in depth engage with the material. And if you have comments, write them on Post-its and just place them on the board. Thank you.
Also, we can make large scale copies of your perfect take it home with you. We spend a few days reading through it thoroughly. We have that capability with here. Probably something
Yeah.
that way you can do that.
They did a great job already.
Just with the cover here. With the cover here.
Yeah.
I just know if you turn it over, really a nice little key map here. You see right away before you fold it over. First time I have a part written through it all. It's just graphically, I think it's very, very good and pretty clear. The areas, you know, the map, 66, I think it's just great.
Well, I will certainly pass along your comments to our graphic designer because she's just been amazing to work with on project.
Just a pretty picture for the front.
Mr. Scott, I was thinking of headshots of our current.
Then you'd have to burn
It would be good for road. Yeah. Very good. The other two, and
Yeah, no, I was thinking we'd either have it in the community room for the week or something like that, but I can probably.
This is an easy one. You probably already know the answer to this.
I think it is definitely the best topic that we have, and that's part of why, this is even, by the way, I didn't mention it, Stacy used the colors from the Wildlife History book to do this map, so they're actually coordinated with each other. So I think with advertising the Wildlife History book in that middle left,
That might be a good place to put it,
yes,
because I think people are going to be interested in that.
Are we gonna be able to give these away this September?
Yes, they will be available this September. We're at the end of July now. The printer has said as long as we get it at the beginning of September.
These will really, you have to have gifts for people. We can't give them books anymore. And this will really attract people. Everybody will want it. I just think it's very appealing to them, so.
We will have 2,000 copies by Celebrate Wild.
Great.
Oh, wow.
Have we decided how we're gonna do?
I can't wait to get mine.
In fact, I think it might be next.
Yes. They'll go.
I'll I've been on the commission that we've had so many things going at one time. Fire.
You wait.
No sticking on the back. Anything else on the points of interest now? Okay, we'll move along then to the history book discussion.
Chair Stevens, were you using your microphone just now?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Ralph, while we were down there, turn it back on.
Please do remember these microphones aren't just for us to hear each other. It's also so that in the live stream, people can hear.
Okay, history book.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. Our next item is the Wildwood History Book. So I think I'm going to start with, so for the last several months, we have been talking about the selection of a copy editor for the Wildwood History Book, and we've also been finalizing the content for the book ending. At our last meeting, the department very optimistically suggested that we could release this book next February during the city's incorporation month. However, with the hiring of a very talented copy editor in Ms. Mary Andino, who has a PhD from Washington University in history and extensive experience working as an editor, including for a state historical society, we've had some fresh perspectives on many of the topics we've been discussing as a commission, including, and I'll just start with the end, the book schedule. Once we all got together in a room and started talking about how much time it was going to take per task to get us to book completion, we discovered that publishing a book isn't quite so easy as 1, 2, 3. It's more like 15 steps. And each of those steps takes some time to complete. So we are now looking at July 4th, that weekend of July 4th next year, as our book launch date. And I think we have a very solid book schedule laid out for your review this evening in your agenda packet, so you can see just how many steps are involved in this process and what led us to that date. So I feel fairly confident. We can never promise. This is a new project for all of us. And there certainly are circumstances out of our control sometimes, but we are working very, very hard to target that July 4th weekend of next year. And I feel very confident in the team that we have in place right now. So moving on to the first item in your packet, the book ending. So for many, many months, we've been reviewing the final 2 chapters of the Wildwood history book, including the incorporation chapter, and then the chapter covering that span of time from 1990 to the end of 2021. And I think a part of the pause in the book's production has been that the conversations we've had around that one chapter, the incorporation chapter, I think we have a consensus on, but that other chapter has been a little bit mixed. We're all just a little uncertain that the book should end at a period of time that is really current. It's still happening. It's still taking place. We don't have the benefit of a historical perspective on it. And particularly given that at the end of 2021, we are still we're still dealing with the fallout of the COVID-19 pandemic, which really put a wrinkle in things. For us as a society, it caused massive changes, and there were a lot of differing viewpoints about what was going on at the time. So I think a lot of that discussion came out at these commission meetings. So with the addition of our new copy editor and having a fresh perspective, and then having a meeting where the book author, department staff, and our new copy editor could get together and talk about, some of the conversations we have been having as a commission, we came to the conclusion that maybe ending the book with that chapter is not in the book's best interest, possibly. And so what we would like to propose to you is a little change in direction. What we're thinking is that instead of ending with that 1990 to 2021 timeframe, potentially instead reincorporating some of that content earlier into the book, where there's call outs on SM Log Cabin, where we talk about city fire and police, where we talk about some of those topics. And then instead ending the book with celebration of 25 years of Wildwood, with like a photo essay with pictures of our town center, of new parks, of those types of milestones that we can pull from the book's timeline. Ms. Von Gruben, the book's primary author, is in support of this direction. And she's been working hard to figure out how certain important content can be reabsorbed elsewhere in the book. There is going to be, she suggested a couple appendices, and our copy editor is working to make sure that reads smoothly throughout the book, if we were to go in this direction. And then what she would do is hold this chapter in safekeeping at the Wildwood Historical Society, in their library and its archives, for future use later on, if we would like to add it perhaps at a later date and complete it with that historical perspective that currently we all agree it might be lacking. So with the end of that presentation, and I will turn it over to you for discussion, but we will be asking for you to discuss this and approve this new direction if you support it tonight. Thank you. Or today, this morning.
Yes, Dan. Your mic on?
Have we thought about like a 5-year update plan or a 10-year update plan, a living book instead of a final book? A book that we're gonna publish on whatever date we publish, but 2 years after that or 5 years after that, we can add additional chapters for the next publication and then just let this book
Well,
march through time.
if I may respond, Mr. Roughton, that's a great point. And I think that's part of why the department is supporting the on-demand publishing option of the book, which you can update and have have available for orders within 48 hours, I believe. So in future years, when a commission is ready to move forward with that final chapter, that is certainly an easily available option to us, and we can include it in the book at that time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Also, Mr. Roughton, I think as the book is published and people take it home and start to read it, we'll probably find out that maybe some of the facts aren't exactly as they were, or they could be changed because there's new information, things like that, that I think that it'll need to be republished or updated just because it's a history book. And I think your suggestion is good. When we get to maybe a 0.5 years from now, and we look back, maybe that chapter will become a little clearer because that lens of history will have been a little more refined.
And there's no ending chapter. There's continuations that will, over time, be up.
So to speak, the story continues. It's a very good point, Mr. Rupp.
We're not to the Paul Harvey and the rest of the story is. Steve?
Yeah, I think it's often difficult to separate current events from history. So I do think we need to have a cutoff point and we stop. And until something has been able to stew for several years or so over time, and historians or observers are able to look at it and discuss it and analyze it, it's not history yet until they can do that. And that's when it becomes history. I think, just to look at the opinion of the presidents of the United States, how they have changed with history. What were the worst can become to the top of the list. So you don't bring a history book up to date. You have to stop it at some place where it can be, where the history can be analyzed and discussed. So I agree with taking that out.
Robin?
Thank you, Chair. Just to build on that comment, I just wanted to note that Ms. Von Gruben in this discussion, she noted that she had tried so hard to be objective in that last chapter that it almost read bland because you weren't able to provide that insight. You weren't able to kind of bring it all together, so to speak. So I just thought I would comment on that. Thank you.
I think that taking some of the things and incorporating them in the other chapters of the book puts everything together a lot better. And I think that's a good move. Jim?
We talked about the chapter 5 being held in reserve. So would chapter 4 be the last chapter? Or are we still going to have an epilogue? How would construction?
So I believe how we left it was we would end with the city's incorporation chapter, which I think is actually written very well for that type of ending. And then we would follow that up with the celebration of 25 years of Wildwood, the photo essay, and then have an epilogue after that.
Anyone else?
We have access. Perhaps. Way chapter. I thought it was great. But I thought there
I can give you a clean copy of the PDF we have for chapters 1 through 4. And then I also have the manuscript for the incorporation chapter. The 25 years of Wildwood is in development, as is the epilogue, now that we've decided on this new direction. But that should not hold the book up in any way, because our copy editor can start with chapters 1 through 4 and the incorporation chapter.
Thank you. Anyone else? Has it been determined the size of the book, whether it's going to be tall or if it's going to be short overall?
The size of the book has been decided to be an 8.5 by 11 format. We may have to tweak it here or there to fit Amazon specifications and trim size requirements, but generally it's going to be that size, which I believe was voted on by this commission. It will be available as an ebook, in paperback, and also in hardcover. It will be a laminate hardcover because that is what Amazon offers. Or sorry, Kindle Direct Publishing. Let me use the correct term.
Anything else? Should we have a motion to do this? Is there a motion to make these changes to what had been decided upon earlier? Jim? Is there a second? Steve? Any other comments or questions? Okay, if those in favor, please raise your hand. Anyone opposed? It has passed.
Thank you.
We will try to restrain one of the commissioners in our next discussion, and that is on the Essen log cabin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and members of the commission, as you know, this particular item has been a priority for all of the members since the start of this year. Part of the reason for that priority is the fact that the project is funded for 2023, which means a lot of decisions have to be made by this commission so that those decisions and recommendations can be then presented to the city council. One of our first working meetings of 2022, we discussed about how the cabin should be used. And there was consensus on the commission's part that understanding how the cabin would be used may dictate to a large degree where the cabin might be best suited for placement or its location. And as you'll recall, and as is identified in the memorandum, we talked about it in a way that I believe is respectful of it, but would not necessarily cause damage to it. And so it's not going to be something that people can go into each and every day. It's not going to be something that hosts large events, but more of an educational tool and something that is for special events, but by a permit process or something akin to that. We also, as a group, the commission and city personnel, we talked about just those concerns that we had about security, utilities, access both for parking purposes and for accessibility for all use groups, et cetera. And ultimately, we coalesced all of that into 3 locations as potential options. Those locations were Village Green, which is just to the west of existing City Hall, our community park, and then finally Glencoe City Park, one of our 11 historic communities. A promise was made to you by the department that we would start providing you some information, maps of the locations that might be best suited. And we received those yesterday. They were late in arriving, and I accept responsibility for that. And they're not all of what I wanted them to be. They lack what I would consider an integral part to have a good discussion about the locations. And what it lacks is the overall site, so you can put it in perspective. For example, If we're looking just here at Village Green, where's City Hall? Where's the parking garage? Where's the 6 acres of Village Green? Where's the cabin? And then how it all fits into the Village Green master plan, so to speak. The park designer that was working with the department wasn't able to complete that. They are still in process. And so what he sent over is what was available at that time. And it starts to give you a flavor of what we're talking about. And that flavor is what I want to kind of identify today. I don't expect a selection today because I still think you need the larger context to make your decision. But what the department has provided to the designer is the following: that to make the project affordable, that we use existing improvements as much as possible. And so you'll see a common thread through all 3 of these, that there is nearby existing parking. There are nearby existing restroom facilities. There's availability of electric, which was the key utility identified by the commission for the purposes of the restoration and use of the cabin. There are accessible walkways or existing improvements that offer an outdoor area, a patio, something akin to that, so that people can look at the cabin, sit, enjoy it. And also, key amongst that common thread is that there are other activities in an easy walking distance, meaning either a playground, a trail, something akin to that. So that's the common thread, so to speak, through all of them, and hopefully that's acceptable to the commission members. I'm more than willing to accept any first thoughts that you had on all of this, but as I say, I still think you need to kind of have the 66 acres of community park so you can see how it all fits together. Because in the case of community park, this is on the northernmost end. It's some distance, but not a great distance from the pavilion and the playground. But it is also, in this case, there's 2 shelters. There's a portable restroom facility, and then the Great Meadow itself, and easy access to the perimeter trail. In the case of Glencoe, we have an existing parking lot. We have walkable trails and sidewalks. We have a playground. We have a restroom facility. And again, key amongst them, there's easy access to an electric connection. Village Green was actually the most difficult from a standpoint because surprisingly, and Mr. Scott probably recognizes this from his background and others that have been maybe in construction development, there's quite a grade change between Main Street up to the top of the community garden area. And that grade change presents some problems for accessibility and how best to make the cabin accessible as the department identified in its June memorandum. What the department was hoping in this particular case is, again, to share improvements. And so as part of the Village Green Master Plan, there's intent to add parking on the drive that provides access to the rear of this building. There is an intent to have a major pavilion area there that at one time will house a concession stand with restrooms. There'll be the great lawn. There concerts will be held. And then again, we have the community garden and more available parking on City Hall. So what I would encourage you to do is take a look at these. I'll get those other maps to you as quickly as I can, hopefully well before August 25th. But as I concluded in the memorandum, I think it'd be a great opportunity just to take these because they are aerial photographs and maybe just go walk the sites before we have our next meeting so you can get a firsthand feel for it. I'll volunteer Melanie and Robin to walk with you. And I'll hear about it when they get back, but I'm kidding. But no. So again, if you have some general comments right now, great. If we've missed the location, we probably need to know that sooner than later. But you have, let's say, a roadmap to go out and just start looking around, and then we'll get you better information when we can have more of a detailed discussion and drill into the issues a little bit more. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions and comments for
Go
Joe?
ahead.
Dan?
So we have this project. Maybe a good place to put it.
Well, I don't have verifiable numbers for community park or let's say the Glencoe area where we have the Al Foster Memorial Trailhead and the Glencoe City Park. But I think both of those, if you've ever driven through, by them or used them, they're packed most of the time. We had a new resident picnic last Saturday. It was 96 degrees around 11 o'clock and there were still people out on the playground. So I was pleasantly surprised. But we'll do our best to give you some numbers. If I take court out of the equation, City Hall might have a pretty good number of people as well, but we're not going to, I'm kidding again, sorry. But yeah, we'll do our best to kind of give you a hierarchy of what we think is the most populous or most used facility versus what may be
Elite.
less.
Tracy.
Is there any for location? He's stolen again. Is that?
In hierarchy, in terms of safety, it's probably Village Green. We have almost no problems here in terms of break-ins of vehicles, even within the parking garage structure itself. Community Park is probably second most safest in that we've had some break-ins down there, but not necessarily a rash of them. The one that creates the greatest problem is actually Glencoe and the Al Foster Memorial Trailhead. It's symptomatic of those facilities. People know that when they leave, when the bad people see people leave, they know they're probably going to be gone for a bit, and it's a right time to do some exploring. So yeah, Glencoe is probably the one I would have the greatest concern.
Steve.
Okay, I'm looking at just a couple of comments that in the community park, actually, when I went out there looking around, this was my favorite location and actually right in that location. But then I was looking, that's fairly low there and near the creek. Is that area subject to flooding? Do we need to move higher than that? Or what? Since we just had some rather heavy rain lately, what's our 100-year or 1,000-year flood level?
It's a very good question and one that the park designer immediately asked, should I be concerned about floodplain? And quite frankly, the greatest extent of floodplain is on the southern end of the Great Meadow, which is by the playground and pavilion. And as you trend to the north, it becomes less and less. I'll have him put the floodplain limits on the map, the large context map for you.
Because if anything, I really like this location, looking out over the meadow. And if anything, if it's just necessary to move it towards the east, up against the hillside that goes up against the main road. So those two, the city park or the city town center and this are my preferences. They're away from the road. They're away from walkways. And that's the way I think that the house should be located, not just like in Glencoe, just right on the right off the parking lot. But in the town center, if you can solve the grade changes, but again, a walkway that winds around and goes up a hill, keeping the grade level is not a bad way to get there, because that's the way you get there. So town center now, and again, I've got to go down and look at the Glencoe location, but they're a little too close to the main walkway or the road. So I think got some good ideas here, and as long as we keep of course, Glencoe is also subject to flooding too.
And that's why we own a great deal of land in the Glencoe area through acquisitions and flood buyouts. But you're absolutely right. There's only about a third of Glencoe City Park that actually doesn't flood. And that's kind of limiting where we show it. So I'll really appreciate if you all take a ride down there, and because there are a couple of other locations we looked at. But again, we tried to stick with that common thread of here's the things we want to use if they're available and save cost. Thank you
I'll
for your
be-
comments, Mr. Scott.
Without further information, I'll be voting for the community park location. I think that's the most appropriate, but. we're
I
gonna
have one
look at it.
question. Will there be cameras on this? Do we know?
Well, if the log cabin is placed at Village Green, we have security cameras all around the campus here, so to speak now. We are looking at security cameras in Community Park, but more down by the existing pavilion and playground, not up at the north end. In Glencoe City Park, we have nothing in that regard.
Okay, thank you. That's good information to know. Anyone else? Oh, I'm sorry, this has been Cynthia.
That's okay. I concur with a lot of the questions that have just been asked. So we're of like mind in many ways, but I would choose, without seeing the new replica of the drawings that you're talking about, that I would see that the Village Green would be my choice because of safety and because of accessibility. And it's not remote as much as, and I love Community Park. But I would not think that that would be a place where I wanted to take a busload of kids when I could take them right here in the center of town.
Thank you, ma'am.
Very quickly, yeah, the topographical concerns were mine as well. The floodplain delineation, it's outmoded. And so if it's possible to just put a couple of elevations there around it so that we can get a handle on just how, because I have a pretty good handle on creek flooding, just because I live near two creeks. But I think that would be very helpful to make the decision. But I sort of agree. I was leaning strongly toward Community Park for this location, but the idea of being at a concert, bunch of kids around, the cabin is right there, part of the community. Lots of people will see it and so forth. And where we avoid overcrowding in the community park, which is it'll be a concern at some point. So anyway, that's my preliminary feedback.
Thank you very much. As I say, I appreciate any and all comments.
Anyone else? As I said, it's all very exciting.
This particularly because for some of the veterans on the commission, we've been struggling with this issue for a number of years. So to get to 2023 and be able to finally see it come to fruition would be a major achievement for the commission, and certainly one we'd appreciate very much.
Before I was part of the commission, I was invited to come to talk about my Hamilton family. And so my husband and I came to the commission meeting that night, and as people were gathering, there was just buzzing going on. And that was the day it was discovered that the cabin had been stolen. And we sat there and said, how can someone steal the log cabin? It was just, so it was interesting to me then later to be appointed to the commission and start talking about it. And I go, oh yeah, remember that night. And it was just an unbelievable situation. So it's good to see things coming to fruition, that it is going to be erected again and have some real significance to our community.
And just as a footnote, there'll be a lot of decisions that this commission will have to make regarding the foundation, because those stones that were part of the original Essen cabin, we've never found them. And obviously the roof was not part of what was left and was not recovered. So like I say, the commission's got a big task ahead of it, but I feel you're up to the challenge.
All working together, and that's what it's all about. The work program.
Again, thank you, Madam Chair, and this will be very brief. Much of what is on the work program, as you know, we're doing right now, and you've gotten updates from Robin, Melanie, and I. So from that perspective, I'm just going to ask if there are any questions. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I just think you need more to do. That's all. We need to give you something to keep you busy.
Well, in a few months, Mr. Scott, we'll be talking about the 2023 work program, so you can put your thinking caps on and we'll see what we come up with.
Okay, well, we have already taken care of the street name change request. So it looks like we're going on now to the discussion from our site visit on Woodland Meadows Drive.
All right, Madam Chair, I do have a presentation on this item. Madam Chair, members of the commission, last Friday, the Historic Preservation Commission, along with Council Member Clark, attended a site visit to the Tice House, built in 1910, according to St. Louis County records, but 1875, according to our historic buildings inventory. This building is located on a parcel of ground that's proposed for development of 13 large lot homes as part of the West Eden's proposed subdivision. And it's located off of Highway 100 at Woodland Meadows Drive. Upon visiting the residence, we did have the opportunity to view both the exterior and interior of it. It has gone through some deterioration over time, particularly with the passing of Mr. Tice. And it appears that he also had some health problems that led to a lack of maintenance as well. We, in examining the house, it was commented on by several members that there's some woodwork trim that looks very nice and could potentially be preserved. We also noticed an entire Twilight series located on one of the exterior porches. So it was a very, very interesting visit. However, it ended with discussion with Mr. Whalen, where it was proposed that Mr. Whalen come back to this commission with some additional information for it regarding the potential salvageability of the residence, or some alternative options. One such option was noted that potentially we could preserve it as an accessory structure as part of the subdivision development, because that would have a few less code issues that would require extensive restoration work. He was directed to bring this information back to this commission, but it was discussed with staff that he would probably need more than just a week's time to prepare those materials with his architect. So at this time, we have provided a site visit summary to you. You can go ahead and approve it or suggest amendments to the site visit summary. But the department is requesting postponement of this discussion until the August 25th meeting, where Mr. Whalen will come prepared with the information that was requested. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments on our site visit report? Dan? Is that in the form of a motion?
I'll second it.
Alan has seconded the motion. Any comments or questions on it, Steve?
I have no really questions on it, and I think, it needs to come prepared at our next meeting. But, we talked about looking at the feasibility, economic feasibility of restoration, conversion, adaptation of this property into a residence or whatever, and comparing that to the cost of tearing it down and building a new house there. And I think you can't come back and say, okay, I looked at it. The cost of restoring this house is half again as much as the cost of building a new house. I don't think that isn't really satisfying, because I do think you buy a property with a piece of history on it like this, it's going to cost you to maintain it, and you've got it, and you need to take care of it. So it's not just the cost of, it costs a little more. I won't vote for that. It's got to, he's got to pay a premium. You need to pay a premium. I know he needs to pay a premium when he bought this property to protect this house. So that's what I'm going to be looking for next time.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, Mr. Scott, and I certainly, the department appreciates your comments on this topic. I would just like to remind the commission that currently this building is not listed on a historic register. And also, I just would like to note that our historic preservation restoration code is a voluntary code generally. So while this commission can make recommendations to Mr. Whalen, ultimately it will be his decision whether or not to preserve the residence. And
No, I know, we
Director Goodrich,
don't.
you- Okay.
We're not the last word on this, but it is in our historical book. Registered, I don't know what you call those properties that are listed there, such as.
The inventory.
Yes,
I know.
it is surveyed as part of our historic building inventory,
Yes.
which just indicates it's of a certain
right.
age. But it has not gone through a process to be added to the Wildwood Historic Register.
No, I understand that, and I know what we say is our only recommendation, our request. We're not the final word in anything, which sometimes I'm thankful for.
And again, we appreciate your advocacy and we certainly appreciate your comments on this matter. I just wanted to make sure the commission was aware of what we have the power to do as a commission.
Thank you. We do have the motion that's been made and seconded to postpone this until we've heard from Mr. Whalen and have gotten his information at the August 25th meeting. Hearing no other comments, those entitled to vote, please in favor, raise your right hand. Anyone opposed? This has passed. We will deal with it at the August 25th meeting. I have just realized we neglected to approve the July 1st meeting minutes.
Madam Chair, I think you approved both of them at the same time by general
Was it
consent,
both?
if I
Okay,
remember your
okay.
verbiage.
I knew I hadn't done two separate
Thank
ones.
you.
So I was just going back. Thank you. The options for the St. Albans Road property that we had a site visit for. Joe?
Again, thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and members of the commission, kind of turning your memories back to March, we did a site visit out on a property located on St. Albans Road at Route 100 or at Manchester Road, depending on your perspective. At that site visit, there were a number of outbuildings that were being requested by the ownership of the property to be removed, along with the Connell House, which I like to phrase it as the twin to Old Pond School. Not so much into, let's say, architecture, but just same builder, same materials, same general style. Obviously, it didn't take long for the commission members to identify that as a great asset. And one of the few assets by the time we do a site visit that still had its bones about it and was in fact, I think, in very, very good shape and certainly restorable and could be reused for a litany or a range of purposes. The tool that would make this all work is in our master plan. And we have in our master plan, the conceptual land use category map. And that basically says what properties can be used for. This particular property is in what is called a non-urban residential area, and it's intended for residential use and primarily just that. However, in 2002, the City Council and the Planning and Zoning Commission endorsed, ratified, and adopted a fifth land use category, historic. And that is what provides the incentives for restoration of historic assets. So with that particular land use category applied, the property can be used for greater density, potentially commercial activity when not otherwise authorized, or a mixed use. And we discussed this in March inside the home. And so the department's kind of been moving very slowly because the last two applications for the historic land use category did not go very well. There's reasons for that, and certainly the reasons were justified. One was a new development. There was no asset per se. It was just a desire to increase the density of a development in the Glencoe area. The other was an illegal business in a historic structure, but it was illegal business. This is a little different. And so the department took the preliminary step before returning to the Historic Preservation Commission to taking this to the Planning and Parks Committee of City Council. 8 of the members that will ultimately participate in a discussion about what might be the best use for this property if restoration is decided and pursued. The committee gave a ringing endorsement to proceed forward. Dr. Rambo was part of that committee and came front and center and said that he thinks this is an opportunity we ought to pursue. It may not ultimately come to fruition, but certainly we should pursue it. That's the good news. We've got something to go forward with. This week, I met with Tim Kleppel again from St. Albans Partnership. The ownership group is interested. They sent him. I gave Mr. Kleppel some information. He said that they would all go sit down and look through it and then come back and hopefully have some questions and maybe some ideas about what the property could be used for. So this is underway. I'd like to follow up that visit that I had with Mr. Kleppel with the letter that's before you today. I've been called verbose and probably the letter could go on a bit of a diet, but it is what it is and it's before you for consideration. But it is, again, somewhat complex because we have residential zoning, we have land use categories, and in our charter, the land use categories become law. And I wanted to make sure they understood that there's a real opportunity here. And let's maybe not just say, as Mr. Scott mentioned earlier, it's restoration, it's too expensive, let us just do what we want. And so that's why it's a little detailed. But I'd like to get your input on the letter. If there's changes, we'll make the changes, get it back to you in August. I've explained the time frame to Mr. Kleppel with St. Albans Partners. If there's not, and there's a consensus that we can proceed forward, I'd like a motion second and vote to sign the letter and send it on its way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do you need a little bit of time to look over the letter or have you already read it? The discussion.
I read it briefly. I mean, I have no objection to the letter. I think it sounds good and it's the right direction to go in. See.
Thank you.
Any other comment? Can I recall for a motion? Dan? Second? Jim second? Any other comments or questions at this time before voting? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you. Anyone opposed? Motion has passed. We have one other matter for consideration, and that's the opportunity to tour the historic Glencoe. Robin?
All right, Madam Chair and members of the commission, I received a very interesting phone call the other day from a Ms. Ava Gilbert, who is currently approximately 85 years old, living in Illinois, but coming back to this area in September for a family reunion down in Potosi. As part of this trip, she and her daughter would like to come back to our historic Glencoe area and see if some of the buildings that she remembered growing up are still in existence today. She lived there when she was young. In fact, her great grandparents, and parents all lived in that area. Her father was the pastor of the church there and also an avid trout fisherman in the Merrimack. She remembers her great grandmother living in a mother-in-law apartment that was a converted garage. And she remembers her father selling his fish to the Brothers Restaurant up on the hill. So she's a very interesting lady. I found that she was just full of anecdotes and just, you know, the way she described the area. I was thinking as she was talking to me, I'm like, wow, this would be a really cool site visit with the Historic Preservation Commission. We could go with Ms. Ava Gilbert and her daughter to Historic Glencoe, and she could give us a tour of the area through her eyes, having grown up there. And we can explain some of the changes that have occurred throughout time. And this would be an opportunity also to take down her insights and observations as an interview or history to keep in our department files. Now, if we were interested in such a site visit and tour with Ms. Gilbert and her daughter, we would be looking at the dates of Friday, September 9th, I think late in the afternoon. And please be aware that they are currently in the process of planning their excursion. So it's really going to be tied to more their schedule than ours. Or probably more realistically that Monday, which is, how did I write this? Okay, September 12th. Monday, September 12th would be another potential day, and we'd probably do that in the morning. The department would be happy to coordinate such a tour and provide transportation. I believe we would be visiting several milestones from her family history. And so we would have wheels to do so. So if you are interested, please let me know now, and I will continue to coordinate with Ms. Gilbert. I'll just leave it up to you for discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I thought that came to my mind that you were talking about this. I would hope there would be some manner of videotaping her at various spots so that we get what she is saying and see it all at the same time. I think that would be much better than just having her come back here for an interview and talking and videotaping that. So
Well, Chair Stevens, we do have access to some very active students, one of whom is in yearbook. I don't know if any of them might have some technological capabilities, but maybe we can rope some task force members into that.
but that's also during school time.
Oh, you are correct. You are correct. They might be in school.
I saw a sign yesterday that says students return August the 22nd.
Well, Director Vunich, do we have a department video camera?
We do have a video camera. We used it with Miss Stevens when
Yes,
she
you did.
visited with us. But I'll probably just throw up Travis Newberry. He seems to be our
He's
safety
our
net.
other go-to.
Our go-to person, right? Comments on this from anyone? Yes, Dave.
Yeah, first of all, I find it very nice that I will be with somebody older than myself, which is a very rare occasion, but to somebody go through, I found the history of Glencoe really intriguing, and I would really like to hear, because I remember driving by it and when we go for drives on Sunday afternoon, and I found that village just, what is this little town down here? So, and that's the time she can tell me about it. So I'm all for it. I will definitely be there, and I think it should be recorded.
Anyone else? Jim?
So are we talking about Friday afternoon or Monday?
I think Monday's probably the more likely option based on my conversation with her. But again, I'm going to have to go back and forth with them and see kind of how everything's landing in terms of their schedule.
Be exciting. May I have a motion?
Maybe a motion to approve a site visit that the department will coordinate.
Steve has seconded the motion. Any other comments or questions at this time on this? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you. Anyone opposed? The motion has passed.
Thank you. And Madam Chair, I just have one more item. It's not on the agenda this evening, but it would fall kind of under matters, if I may.
Yes.
I received an email recently, and in fact, I have it pulled up, so I'm actually going to shift over to my other microphone. I received an email recently from the grants coordinator with the State Historic Preservation Office, Mr. Andrew Dial. And he had a very eloquent presentation of the fact that there is a grant opportunity available to certified local governments on an annual basis right now that is called the Underrepresented Communities Grant Program. And it's a grant program that was implemented by Congress with the intent to diversify the National Register. So this grant provides funding for for certified local governments to go through that National Register nomination process. And again, it's targeted towards underrepresented communities, such as our African-American communities. I mentioned to Mr. Dial that there is absolutely no way our department would meet their August 10th deadline for such a grant this year. But he did indicate that it is very likely there will be funding next year as well. And so I just wanted to plant that seed in your heads because we do have an item on our work program this year for Westland Acres. I'm not going to go into any potential ideas there, but potentially we can have conversations going forward and take advantage of this grant opportunity at a future date. But I will go ahead and forward Mr. Andrew Dial's email to you. One thing that really just struck me is that the state of Missouri has apparently never applied for this grant. So we received this funding and they are seeking applications. Thank you.
Yes, Jim.
Does the community of Westland Acres have a spokesperson or individual? I know that.
Doris.
If we were to want to do this and engage them, is there a point person?
Yes, the department has contact with several such individuals and we could set up a conversation, and it certainly would start with them. So I'm not interested, I think before we have a discussion about any potential action, we need to have a conversation. I just wanted to bring this grant opportunity to your attention, given the circumstances around it. Again, Mr. Dial was very eloquent in his plea for local governments to take advantage of it.
Is there an amount connected with that?
Yes, it's 15,000 to 50,000. And again, it's mainly targeted at going through that National Register nomination process, which can be quite an extensive process.
Yes,
I'm not familiar with how many individuals live in this area. Could you share that with me? Do you have a knowledge of homes or?
I believe there's still 9 residents that have that heritage or that link with the Westland Acre community. Is that correct, Joe?
I think that's a good estimate. The community, in terms of its population, has dwindled. The church, Union Baptist Church, doesn't have the attendance it once had, but there's still Miss Frazier still lives there, and so
Excuse me,
Doris Frazier,
Doris Frazier.
yeah,
Okay.
which is a
delightful lady.
yes. So there is some representation that, as Robin mentioned, we can almost immediately contact. And then Pastor Harvey Fields used to be the pastor, active pastor of Union Baptist Church. He's now, as he described it, pastor emeritus, which means when there's nothing else, they call him. So, but there's some kind.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes.
One last other, at our August meeting, we'll be talking about Celebrate Wildwood, the setup of the venue and volunteers. So just plant a seed for you. And the date is September 24th from 11 o'clock till about 6, and then concert and fireworks follow.
Will this be in Village Green or back down here? Will, talking about Celebrate Wildwood, will the Westland Acres Union Baptist Church be having their fish again?
Union Baptist Church will be in attendance. They confirmed their participation this week.
Fantastic. We kept watching for their announcements during Lent, during fish fry time, because we'd always gone up there to get fish when they had it. And we never did see a posting. We missed that during the winter time. So it'd be good to have them back. What?
Okay. Yeah, just a comment or maybe a request to the department. We need ongoing training every year. One of the things we're talking about this National Historical Register. Buildings on that, there are requirements that must be met for modifications, modernization, additions, and that to these buildings that may apply to, that we can apply to buildings we're trying to save locally. It's managed by the Department of the Interior, and then it's assigned to each state to their national or their parks department or Department of Natural Resources. But I just wonder if you could obtain for us in training somebody to come, or we go there and have a presentation on what can be done and what are some of the requirements and some of the ideas that can be done for the restoring or restoration or maintenance of historical properties. And I think it would be a good education and learning experience for all of us. I know they've got, you can go online and get their guidelines, and it's quite a long book, but a presentation on that I think would be good. So I would ask, when you have a minute, which I know maybe one of these days you'll have a minute to pursue that. And I think it'd be a good opportunity for training for us.
Mr. Scott, I will be sure to line up that training opportunity. As you're aware, we are required as a CLG to go through an annual training. So it sounds to me like we have 2 upcoming trainings to schedule, one in archaeology and the other in the register process and restoration of historic buildings.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm done.
You're done.
I can't say anything else.
You get that down in the minutes, he's done. Is there anything else to come before us? Would you believe we started right about 8 o'clock? It is now 10 o'clock, and we were told this was going to be a longer meeting this morning. Well, it's within 2 hours. How about that? So we do thank both Robin and Joe and the entire staff here at City Hall for all the work you put into getting our meetings arranged and the agendas and keeping us on task. We really do appreciate your help.
Amen.
Yes.
Thank you for providing the stuff.
Yes.
I'm happy to do that.
Greatly appreciate it. I wouldn't have made it until 10 o'clock without that.
Well, there's still some things over there, so please help yourself on the way out. Then it doesn't have to bounce all over West County for me before I get home later today. So,
I move we adjourn.
it has been moved that we adjourn.
Second.
My mic was on. Okay. Alan seconds. Any other comments or questions or no complaints before we take the vote? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you. Anyone opposed? We are adjourned. Oh, my goodness. Well, Robin's not familiar with the gavel.
Yeah.